So podcast number 2, second one, pretty much going to be talking mostly about animals and the consumption of them, diet, uh, dairy, just the consumption of the different ways of eating it, and the kind of I'm going to go over why I am in my current state not aligning with eating meat, not aligning with drinking milk or having cheeses, but I'm very much open and understanding of people that do eat it, for various different reasons. So specifically, I went vegan really for the health aspects, and I eventually got deeper into the whole as to why certain meats are good or certain meats might be bad, and I'm going to kind of just get right into my point here, where sheep that we eat and consume on a daily basis are descendants from mouflon, from hundreds of and lots of years of mutation, but basically they were changed through adaptation of husbandry, just like chickens are descended from jungle fowls and pigs are descended from wild boars. These are not natural. They're not as natural of animals as they used to be, and they're changing. Their change has been prevalent in the way that they've existed, essentially. So I'm going to go to you, Curtis, and see what your thoughts are on different kinds of and the adaptation in nature of animals.
I haven't done a lot of reading or research on that, so this isn't really my area of expertise. That was kind of news to me, the whole sheep thing, actually. So, yeah, I don't really have, I don't think too much I can add to that. But, I believe in what you say, and yeah, that, if the original animal, so you're saying that might be a healthier, meat than what, the sheep or pig is today.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I'm going to break a little bit further into that. So all of these animals would be extinct in nature at the same rate at which we consume them. So the crossbreeding and the domestication from man that has existed since right around the time of religion, we're keeping them alive. So most of the world eats animals that wouldn't exist naturally without the intervention of humans. And a continued point on this is that these animals are removed from their cycles of nature that include, but aren't limited to, natural selection, predation, adaptation, and basic freedom. However, these animals wouldn't exist without the protection that we give them. So we feed them and give them life, so they're existent upon us. So it makes me think, what is healthier to eat? Is it healthier to eat something that has been just cycled through hundreds of years on a farm, not knowing what freedom is, not knowing what fresh air can be in some cases, and just getting pumped full of antibiotics and these sorts of things? Or would a healthier meat be something that's just out in nature and more roaming around?
Yeah, I mean, the closer you get to nature, I think the better. So if you were to eat meat, the less man is involved in that process. Probably the better quality that meat is going to be. Yeah, like you mentioned, all the hormones, and then the feed, and then just the stress of the living conditions, compared to an animal in the wild. But even, I used to deer hunt, and yeah, it was a wild deer, but it was still eating all this GMO crop corn. And when you would gut the deer, you would find the corn in the stomach, so that right there it's eating that, so even the wild animals can't really get away completely from man-made toxins,
Absolutely, and the same thing with the air pollution, and what they're breathing, and so I totally agree with that. But in terms of meat, I really kind of put it in three classifications of meat. I put game, which is just out in nature, and I would see that as being the healthiest meat that you could eat. Is meat that's been on the land and harvested and tended and like cared for in its process. And then the second classification I would put in like a loving domesticated environment where they're still void of predation, void of adaptation, void of freedom. However, there's like a bond that humans can make with these animals.
Right up until they slit their throat, right?
Exactly. So that's why I put that on the second level, because they're still loved and appreciated, but eventually they don't know freedom. It's just kind of like having a dog or a cat. They don't. It's a tricky topic to navigate. But I really do see it on the second level because they don't know the freedom. They're not in nature. They're not eating nature naturally. They're not having the natural life cycles. And then, of course, the third and final classification I would put as corporate domestication, which is just machine-driven creation. And, yeah. So
the moral of the story, the closer you get to nature, probably the better.
It always seems to be the case, right?
The more man interferes, typically, the lower in vibration it falls.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote a couple things down that I'm going to read because I find it interesting here. Now, the food of cattle can be their sacred fluids and not just their flesh, which can be offered by animals. An example of this is women over-lactating, offering up their extra milk for other babies. This is commonplace, and humans have been consuming animal milks for a long time as well, and it's ingrained in many cultures. But is it healthy? It's really just kind of subjective and kind of dependent on the situation. Now, an animal steeped in love from its owner by the law of correspondence and perhaps vibration, which suggests its secretions and flesh may be more beneficial to the individual. So if there's I kind of think of if there's a loving animal that is offering up its sacred fluids, it's a little bit different than just taking and wanting and just taking rather than asking for or have the permission. The animal that you're taking the secretions from, is it living happy? Is it sickly? And then conscious eating also takes place, in which we were talking about a little bit in the other podcast. So the intention that you put into it. So that's why growth hormones, vaccines, medications, pesticides, they all play a role in what you're consuming. Because if you're having milk that's not been homogenized and just coming straight from the cow, and it's really and it feels good, but that cow has had vaccines and all this, it's in that second classification of being there, then that's still a factor. I still see it as a factor.
Of course.
Now, I did some really deep digging into A1 and A2 beta casein amino acids in cheeses and milks, and this is pretty much the reason why I don't drink or eat milk or have cheese as of recent, really, because I've been really considering it and wanting to kind of get into the milk again. I really do want to consume milk, and I'm going to wait for the opportunity to arise. But one thing that I'm not going to do is have cow's milk, and that's because of the A1, A2 thing. Are you aware of A1 and A2?
Is it a hormone? What is that?
It's a protein.
Oh, it's a protein. Okay. No, I'm not.
Okay, so beta casein amino acids. So basically, all proteins are amino acids made up of molecules: nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and others. Beta casein is a protein amino acid that is 229 chains long, and this comes from. Now we're talking about the protein, beta casein protein in milk from an A1 or an A2 cow. The 67th amino acid is the only difference between A1 and A2 milk. Now, A2 is considered to be the healthier milk because it's found in older generation cows, it's hard to just, you have to literally do the tests to figure it out. But essentially, it's in all goat milk is A2, sheep milk is all A2, and that's because they're not genetically modified like cows are. Cows are literally genetically modified right now, or like the newer ones are. Maybe there are some ones that aren't, but the majority from my research has shown that. So the 67th amino acid is the only difference between A1 and A2, and its proline is in A1, and its histidine is changed into histidine in the newer cows from proline. And the proline binds to the opioid peptide BMC7, which has been linked to diabetes, type 1 diabetes, gastrointestinal disease, and targets your brain receptors that makes things addictive. And is part of the reason why conventional dairy is addictive. So to kind of it's a lot of like science stuff here, but essentially A1 cows have excess of BMC7 because of it's binded to BMC7. They have an excess of BMC7 because the proline has binded to it. So histidine doesn't bind to BMC7 like it does with A2. So there's an excess of BMC7 in A1 cows, which is in their blood and their body and its excretions. So it's this peptide that is prevalent in those types of cows that target the opioid receptors in the brain, and it's.
So was this purposely done, or was this just a byproduct of whatever mutations or just genetic engineering?
So honestly, I have no idea because I haven't really researched that. There's been a lot of actually research about A1 and A2, and if you literally just Google it, you'll find what I'm talking about, and that. And some studies will gloss over it. Some studies will point to the seriousness of it, and it makes it more addicting, and it's a buildup of it.
So which one's better?
So A2 is better.
Okay.
It's been, like I said, BMC7 has been linked to type 1 diabetes, gastrointestinal disease, and also it's targets that, like the thing I was just saying.
So do you know of any studies saying A2 milk is like beneficial for health, or is it just like less harmful than A1? Are you able to give any info on that?
Well, A1 over A2. Well, yeah, A1 has been shown to be more
toxic,
detrimental to the body, because they've done studies that have put two together, and people will have less of a reaction to A2 than they will to have A1.
So then, why do you want to consume milk? Do you think there's a good quality milk in your terms? So is it like just for the taste buds, or do you think there's healthy benefits to that?
Okay, so before I get into that, I'm going to kind of move to the next part of what I was going to be talking about. So now another reason why I don't consume milk and cheese is because they're pasteurized.
Okay. Yeah.
And pasteurization it's a heating process. I think you know this.
Yeah.
So lactose is the natural sugar in dairy, and that sugar gets cooked because pasteurization is a sort of heating up process, which involves the Maillard reaction principle.
And that's because the powers that be say it kills the bacteria or harmful organisms that could be in it. So,
yeah, well, something that's we've been doing it for hundreds and thousands and millions, not millions, thousands of years, and now for the last 60 years we've been needing to heat it up for some reason. Obviously, it makes no sense.
And there's like flash pasteurization too, which is only supposed to be for, I don't know, like a few minutes or something, or
there's
less than that. Like
there's honestly so many different types of pasteurization. It's true. There's like short intervals. There's even like UV, like pasteurization. I've seen a lot of different stuff on that, but essentially, pasteurization, from my perspective, is not good at all in general.
Yeah, and real quick on that, I forget where I read this from, but actually things that are pasteurized, they test it like a couple weeks later, and there's actually more bacterial organisms in there than there would be compared to that same milk that wasn't pasteurized after 2 weeks.
Well, that kind of makes sense too, because you're taking away the natural products that it would have a defect of it being a natural product away from itself. Kind of like when you take eggs. Eggs are meant to, like, I don't eat eggs, I don't want to have eggs, but like there's the casing around them that protects them, and it gets cleaned off, and therefore they need to be refrigerated. So normally, if you have eggs, they don't need refrigerated unless they've been gone through the process. So like that's the same sort of concept where you're taking away its natural processes of existing. So that doesn't surprise me. But a little bit further into pasteurization is you heat up the sugars and you get the Maillard reaction, which ends products are an opioid targeting compound that's super addictive, kind of like caramel, right? You heat up into the sugar, and it breaks down into the Maillard principle, and it breaks down into addictive, an even more addictive substance. You take meat and it caramelizes, it browns it. That's the Maillard reaction principle. It's our opioid targeting receptors of flavor and the kind of addiction, or addictive, really. Like, but anyways, so pasteurization is a denaturing of the nutrients as well. And it removes the life force as well. So that's also another reason why I choose not to have milk or dairy, in that form. But and I think that the majority of it is really unhealthy for that reason. And that's but I do want to, and I do know somebody, and I'm eventually gonna have some like fresh goat milk from a goat. And I'm looking forward to doing that because I want to have like a fresh taste of it, something I've never had before in my life. I've always had like pasteurized, or if it's been not pasteurized, then I've had like, it might have been like A2 or A1, I don't even know. But I want to actually test it for myself and have my own sort of backbone of understanding before I talk upon anything in that regard. And I do think that there's some natural healthy things that can be taken from that. I think there's some good like things for the microbiome and some good gut bacteria that it could provide for the body. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where I stand with cheese and milk. I really wanted to kind of get through that because I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with having milk and cheese. I think that there's something inherently wrong with the way that we make cheese and the way that it's processed and the same thing with meats. I don't think there's anything really inherently wrong with eating them. I just think there's the whole process through that has distilled to where we are now is really bad. So whereas I probably wouldn't really have like meat, even if I had the ability to hunt it, because I'm not really into the whole killing thing, I wouldn't be opposed to maybe having fish later on in my life or something like that. So I'm really not trying to demonize meat or cheese. I'm really trying to get to the core concepts of why I don't think that it's healthy in this day and age to have it straight from the butcher or straight from the store, essentially.
So yeah, it's just other processes that things that are pumped into these animals, and like you said, the pasteurization, homogenization, and homogenization. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but that like with milk, it's like pressurized somehow. And I read that messes with like the protein or just the structure in it, and something with more protein in the blood. I can't remember, but do you know anything about the homogenization?
Yeah, I don't know too much about homogenization.
I just remember it not being a good thing from what I read.
Yeah.
So someone will have to look into again, or people can look up on their own.
I really would think that any sort of chemical or mechanical process that we do to a live ingredient is really not good. There really would only be, I can't even think of any exceptions right now, but homogenization, pasteurization, these are all the real reasons I really do avoid that type of thing. So yeah, that's pretty much the majority of what I wanted to cover here.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to like touch up on with that?
I think I already said it, but I'll just reiterate it again. The closer you get to nature, typically
Absolutely.
the better.
Yeah, man.
The less human involvement, typically the better.
Yeah, and
typically. There might be some exceptions, but...
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that, I'm gonna end on pretty much agreeing with you and saying that the more raw of anything that you have, the less cooked, I think it's gonna have less impact on the body. And I've had this sort of experience myself where I'll just have raw stuff for a couple days, or I'll just have juice, or I'll just fast, and it might take a toll on my mental acuities, my mental aspects, because I'll be craving something, but my body will be quiet, and it'll just go through like its processes without any sort of hindrances, really. So yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, Till next time.
Till next time.